call. I'm coming to you from Mahuba's Kloof. I'm actually on the way to a client in Palabora for training. I just wanted to talk to you about profit margin. I always get a lot of entrepreneurs who ask me what exactly is a profit margin. So let's first define profit. A simple example, if I go out and I buy stock that's worth 100 rands and then I sell it for 130 rands, that means I've made a profit of 30 rands. Now, how do I work that back to a margin? I simply take the profit that I've made, which is the 30 rand, I divide it by the cost, which is 100 rand, and then I come out with 30%. So that would then become my profit margin. Now, it gets a bit more trickier when you now talk of net profit and gross profit margins. Now, your gross profit, in the example we've given, I've bought stock for 100 rand, I sold it for 130 rand, I've made 30 rand. So that's my gross profit. So my gross profit margin is 30%. Now, I want to find out what is my net profit. Now, from the 30 rand that I have, if I've spent 20 rand on petrol or any other expenses, and then I remove the 20 rand from the profit, I'm left with 10 rand. So I now have a net profit margin of 10%. Now, one can see that if you don't manage your expenses well, you can easily show a good gross profit margin, but if you don't manage the rest of your expenses, you can actually run at a loss. So in our same example, if my expenses now move up to 40 rands, you can see that I've now actually made a net loss of 10 rands, which means it's not even worth my while to actually engage in such a business activity. So how does one determine the profit margin they want to make? The advice I always give people is start off with your net profit margin. Say to yourself, I want to make a net profit margin of 10%, 15%. Then based on that, you can calculate what your selling price is going to be. So you start off with your cost and then you work it backwards. This is what the cost of my product is. This is what it's going to cost me to sell it, including all my other expenses. And therefore, for me to make a net profit margin of X amount, I then need to sell it at this price. Now, industry norms will differ. If most people talk of a profit margin of 30%, 40%, 35%, I always say look at your volumes. If you are in a high volume game, you can afford to have lower profit margins, because at the end of the day, when you multiply a profit of 10 rand by 1,000 units, that's a lot of money. But if you multiply a profit margin of 10 rands with 10 units, that becomes a less amount. I hope this will help you going forward in terms of planning how you work out your margins, so that you make sure you actually come